New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here. Welcome to Inclusive Church. Here on the New Thought Media Network, it is noon Mountain Time, and every week we come together to talk about, think about, and recommit to creating and sustaining spiritual communities where all different kinds of people are sharing the experience of learning, practicing, growing, and expanding their commitment to this community. So, two things I always try to remind myself, and by doing that, I remind you that inclusive church or churches, that's very intentional. Let's reclaim the word church. And remember, as we learned or relearned during COVID and the pandemic, that the church is not the property. It's not the place where you meet. It's not a building. It is the people that make a church, the people who come together. That's what the church is, the congregation. And so as I use the word church, I'm not talking about a building. I'm talking about the people who come together. And I hope that you are doing the same. And hey, Anita, good to be with you today. And as Anita has modeled, if you just want to check in the chat or in the comments section, I'd love to say hello to you as well. In addition to the reminder about church, I always try to remember to say that when I say the leaders, like you're a leader in a spiritual community, or you are one of the leaders in your church, or you need to make sure all the leaders in your church are thinking about how to be inclusive. I'm not talking about just the minister or people who have minister in their title. I'm talking about everyone who is working so hard, diligently to grow the community, to make sure that the right resources are available, to make sure that there are programs and services and classes that serve the church, the people. So leader, it could be someone who is a volunteer who leads up a committee. It could be someone who serves on the board of directors. It could be someone who gives a significant amount of money as their way of contributing and to ensuring that there are programs and services and resources available. So with those two things out of the way, what are we going to talk about today? Today is it's a toolkit session. If you missed last week, it was a great conversation with Reverend Sunshine Day. And next, in a couple of weeks, I'm looking forward to a conversation with Reverend Vicki Jeter. But today is a toolkit day. And Marjorie, so glad that you're with us today as well. So today is a really interesting question, at least for me. And I'm like thinking about this stuff all the time. But I've been noticing some things this year. And it's not a new pattern, but it just seems like it's a pattern that's growing or expanding. And it's been making me really think about how to talk about the topic of having our spiritual communities and engaging adults from each generation or adults from different generational groups. Now, we could expand this conversation and talk about having people from all age groups and, spend a fair amount of time on what we do with our youngest children and what we do with our adolescents and our teens and our youth. But I'm really focusing today on what do we do with adults. So for that, we could say 21 to 100. But I'm going to be thinking a lot as I share with you about 25-year-olds to 75-year-olds, right? 25-year-olds to 80-year-olds. And we know we have formal generational names that have been used and accepted, in society, baby boomers, right? Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. And we can use that kind of as an underpinning, but what I find is that most people don't know exactly. They might know what group they've been dropped into, but they don't really know the ages around each of the formal generations. And I don't want to turn this into that kind of educational session. So I'm just going to be talking about, kind of different age ranges in parentheses. The trend that I've noticed that is really capturing my attention right now is the question, do these different groups based on age are generally grouped by age, are they collaborating in order to build and grow your congregation? Or are they competing in order to build and grow your congregation? And some of the things that have happened in the first 4 months of the year that have really, or in the first 3 months of 2025, that have really brought this into the forefront include seeing and hearing people talk about having a group of young adults in their 20s and 30s do a Sunday service and it being called the takeover. And the young people talking about, yes, we're taking over. We're taking over and we're taking over. And so now you have to pay attention to us. Kind of that attitude or that message. And even in a fun kind of way, like, hey, we get to take over, show you what we can do. But the languaging, the takeover, like we're going to take over now. And especially, I guess, because of the overall environment that we live in, at least in the US, although I could say globally, where the idea of power is limited and and whoever is in charge is in power and no one else is important. The languaging, I think the takeover caught me with that. And interestingly enough, if you've been watching the Inclusive Church on a regular basis, last summer, in the summer of 2024, you might remember a really energetic conversation with Reverend Abigail Scherer about the violence in our language and working on what other words could we use. So that also may be one of the reasons the phrase "the takeover," really captured me. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Another example that has come up, and I am participating in a series of conversations around how can we be more inclusive of people who are in their 40s and 50s, and what are some of the challenges or some of the circumstances that many people in that age group face, especially if they are being a part of or trying to be a part of a community or a movement where it seems that everything is designed around people who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. And it's just very interesting. I'm loving being peripherally a part of the conversation. I'm not leading it, I'm not guiding it. I definitely want to support the conversation. And what strikes me is how easy it is to say what we don't want, and how hard it is to not only define what would work better, but then build that. And so it also feels like it's in competition instead of in collaboration. Um, and so that's what I'm wanting us to be thinking about today. When we say we want an inclusive church, do we only is the only way to approach that is by having competing groups, or maybe it should be conquering groups versus collaborative experiences. So then I began to think about, well, when have I seen collaboration across different age demographics? And the first thing that came to mind for me was an example of a, a center, a spiritual center, a church that had a group that met regularly, and it was people who were in their 60s and older, and they would meet every month or every 6 to 8 weeks, and share, get to know each other, but also take some spiritual principle and talk about it and how it shows up in life, or go a little bit deeper with it. And that same church had a group of young adults who were in their late 20s to late 30s, the majority of them. And they also met. They met monthly, and they had their own thing, and how, they could go deeper spiritually together. And it was, both groups were successful. But an invitation was made for them to meet together. Not ongoing, just to have a meeting together, to spend a couple of hours and have the older congregants mentor or share, like answer questions. Our mentor is too strong of a word. Answer questions that the younger congregants had, and for the younger congregants to answer questions the older congregants had about life, about how applying these spiritual principles that we teach, like how does that show up, what's hard about it, what's easy about it. And both groups, members of both groups, said that was like the best meeting of their group that they had ever attended up until that point, and they wanted to do it again. And for me, that was really interesting because when we go to choose what programs we are going to offer, when we are in meetings or making decisions as leaders in our spiritual communities about who will have what assignments and who is visible on the platform, and what are the monthly themes or the talk titles. All of those kinds of things are going to relate to people from different age groups in different ways. So I think it's really important for us to do more collaboration, or at the very minimum, to take the approach of, if I'm going to get input, if I'm going to ask people for input or feedback on something that we've already done, input on what we're going to do, or feedback on what we've already done, it is so important to make sure I'm not just asking the people who are in my age group. I'm not just asking the people who I hear from all the time. And on a regular basis, I am exploring what is it that people from different age groups need or desire, and what is it that I am doing that connects with people from different age groups and what doesn't. Clearly, if we are speaking or teaching a class, and we are trained really well that we want to give examples, it's so important to really think about, oh, I want to give an example from my life. And how broad will that reach in terms of the people who are going to hear the message? And it doesn't mean I have to never use examples that are from my own experience, but it does mean that I need to either explain them in a way and connect them and make that example relevant for people from different age groups. And or I can use that knowing it's going to really connect with people who are in my age group. And then I need to do the work to find an example, a real life example that may or may not be my own experience, that will relate to the people who are 20 years older or 20 years younger. And that does mean I can't just talk about me. It means I can't just use my life experience as if my life is universal. And there are people from all age groups who are guilty of this. I have a colleague who I respect greatly, who is making a big impact in the world, who is 25 years younger than I am. And it's great to see this happening, not only for this person, but for all the people this person can relate to and serve and connect with. However, 99.9% of their examples are from their own life, using their own slang or language, and and has said, I don't know that that's true anymore, but has said at some relatively recent point, well, I have to always adjust and figure out what the older speaker is talking about, so they just need to figure it out. Right? I'm not going to change anything I say or do to accommodate the older people, because, I'm the future. And so they just need to get over it. Well, that's that whole experience that many people in our spiritual communities, in our churches, that's how they have felt, as if the older speaker has used example after example that doesn't resonate with them, and the older population has acted as if, well, I can't help it if you don't know what that means. Like, go look it up. You've got Google. And so that is part of what creates this idea that we're competing. And if I'm the one in power, I'm young, I'm going to take over the service. And so it's going to be all about me, or all about us, our age group. That is not what we teach. We don't teach that in New Thought denominations anyway, we teach there is oneness because we are all created from the same source and we are all connected to one another. We teach that whatever happens to anyone is happening to everyone. We teach that whatever I want for myself, I want for you. And so these patterns reflect the human norm of competition, of power mongering, of power plays, of of hierarchy and superiority. And so we all know about this, but we don't have to replicate it in our spiritual communities. So I'm suggesting that now is a good time for us to really pay attention to how we can bring people together and create a church where there is collaboration in creating our programs, our classes, our resources, and the way that we engage with one another. Within Centers for Spiritual Living, and maybe within other denominations under the umbrella of New Thought, for decades there has been a program that is really popular in a lot of churches, where as a fundraising process, people will raise their hand to host an event, an event, and then they take on as host the cost of the event, whatever they decide it's going to be. And then people in the congregation bid on the opportunity to attend that event. And all the money that is earned from people bidding, it becomes a gift to the church. And in most places, it's referred to as divine dining, and the events are designed around a food event. I have people to come over from my house for a pizza party, or I'll have people come to my home, and because I love to cook, and I'll say, I can have 6 people and I'm going to do a gourmet dinner, or I'm going to fly in food from New England and have a New England crab boil. Those two don't match. Let's say I'm going to fly in fresh seafood from New Orleans and do gumbo, and right. But I get to describe it, and then I host it. And all the people who bid, that money goes to the church. I might decide I don't want to bring people to my home. I want to host 20 people at my favorite restaurant. And so the restaurant, right, gives me the check, and everybody comes to the restaurant, but they bid to the church in order to come to this event. The last time we did this at my home spiritual community, a number of people said, well, I'm going to host it over at this place on a Friday night, and they have a lot of games and stuff. So I'm going to host it as a game night at this restaurant, and, I'll pay for, nachos and snacks, and then people, will pay for their own drinks. And so in my home spiritual community and in a few others, it's now not divine dining, right? It's just an opportunity to bring friends together and host them in different kinds of events. So it could be at a park, or it could be go to the zoo. I'm thinking about hosting a roller skating party, right? How do we bring people together? And people will bid. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but this is an example of how you can repurpose something that has been around for a while in a way that can be collaborative, bringing lots of people together from different age groups. And also, since it's no longer just a meal, wow, we could create activities where there are people from different age groups who enjoy the same thing. Maybe maybe it becomes people who have an interest in arts and crafts from different age groups, right? Maybe it's a theme where there's something happening at a local art museum, or maybe it's we go to a concert together of, where the host has paid for 10 tickets, but it's a musician or a group that crosses genres or crosses age groups and has fans from different age groups. That becomes more creative. It becomes a way to really think about bringing people together who are from different age groups. I can't emphasize enough that a lot of knowing what will bring people together means you have to bring them together to talk. You have to talk to them. Even if you talk to them in different age groups, at some point you have to bring people together. What are the overlapping interests? What are the things that we have in common? And the one thing that everybody has in common is whatever your spiritual teaching is. So I would also recommend that if you're a leader in a community that is trying to be age inclusive, that you initially, as you are initially doing this, you find out what you can about what people want. But then whenever you are bringing them together, you keep reminding or keep using the spiritual teaching, the spiritual principles, the spiritual values, the values or mission or purpose statement for your church, so that you are helping people from different age groups see, oh, but we have this in common. We're different in this way, but we have this in common. We're different in these ways, but we have this in common. That is what is going to ultimately help you create an age inclusive community where there is collaboration, mutual respect, and less competition. Now, finally, the final thing that comes to mind that I want to share today is really maybe it's a little side tip, because even though I am focused today on building an age inclusive community, it is not lost on me that it's not that different. This possibility of being competitive instead of collaborative, it's not lost on me that that's really true with any of the dimensions or types of diversity. I remember, coming into New Thought in the 1980s, late 1980s and early 1990s. And as a Black woman, going into many different New Thought environments in unity, in religious science, in a couple of independent groups that were predominantly white. And it really felt like, as a Black person, I was going to have to fight to be noticed and respected, and then included, because there were so much that was missing. There were so many examples used that just didn't resonate with my experience as a Black woman. And over the years, obviously, that began to shift. And to a certain degree, some of it shifted, not just in my personal experience, but when I look at New Thought overall, some of that did shift because people of African descent had to make some noise about, no, this doesn't work for us, or yes, that's okay, and we want to bring in some additional, not replace, bring in some additional types of music, or we can help you by giving you, here are some people you can quote beside dead white men. Like, here are some people of color, here are some Black women, here are some Black men, here are some Latino and Asian and people who are different than who you're quoting now. And it became collaborative, but there was a period where it had to be, where it probably felt to many competitive. Well, we'll just go over here and we'll just do our own thing because you're not hearing us. And maybe it's because of that, I totally understand the pattern. And what I'm trying to encourage you, if you're a leader in a spiritual community, is that you may not be able to bypass it completely, but you don't have to set yourself up for an environment where the competition is built into the culture. You don't have to set yourself up for an environment where the new ideas and the new ways of being and the new messages and the new examples and the new phrasing has to compete and build to a point where there is so much tension, because you can take a collaborative approach sooner rather than later. So that's just the tip. If we look at gender identity and sexual orientation, I think it would be the same thing if there was a church that was heteronormative and did not have a lot of members who identified as LGBTQ plus. Then initially there may be some feeling of competition, but you can avoid it becoming a deterrent, and you can move into your goal of having an inclusive church sooner, faster, and in a more deep way, authentic way, if you don't wait until it becomes an issue. So that's what I want to share with you today about competition or collaboration in age-inclusive communities. Of course, my name is Tracy Brown. Of course, I want you to join me again next Tuesday at noon Mountain Time, right here on the New Thought Media Network for Inclusive Churches. Have a great week.
Thanks for watching The Inclusive Church with Tracy Brown. Join us again next week at 12 noon Mountain Time.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.